Okay, and I'm seeing your things we must be familiar with slide.
Okay. All right, let me make sure I got my stuff together. It's time for me to record mine. Okay.
Okay, well, here we go again. And we just want to welcome all of you to this call. We appreciate you taking time out of your Saturday morning to join us. This is Sherry Plett. I'm here with Dr. David with Building Strength Webinars. And our topic today is going to be about understanding the human brain. And I know, David, that's a topic that you've been interested in for many years. In fact, you at one point even considered being a neuro brain surgeon. And so as we get started, why don't you just tell us, why is it so important that people know how the human brain works?
Well, thanks. That is probably the number one question, really, for health and for longevity. And I want to start with really a story. You remember that college professor who came down to Tulsa, where I stayed for, I think, for sabbatical. He was here for about 6 months, right? Remember that guy?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, he a racquetball player. He's in his 60s, but he has been extremely fit and healthy most of his life. He actually swam for the state of Texas, which, as we all know, is the largest state in the United States, after Alaska. And he's been extremely fit. He's also a top racquetball player, and in the regionals, recent regionals, he came first place. He beat all the guys 30 years below and his age group. He beat everybody and won the prize. So he's what you would call the supreme athlete. But anyway, he and I used to play like 2-3 times a week when he was here. And, well, I would say 3 out of 5 games he would beat me. And sometimes I'll pull a victory here and there. But for the most part, he used to beat me. But one time I actually, I think after my chiropractic visit, and the chiropractic assistant, he gave me this bottle of water. It's called the perfect water. Something about it's better mineralization. It's alkalinized. Something about it that the chiropractic assistant said would help me out. So he just told me to take it before I go into the game. So I said, well, I thought it was another scam. Mm-hmm. So I said I was just going to go in and just humor him and take it. So I took it and drank it. Throughout the game from 10 to 10, I'll drink it. And it didn't feel different, really. I was just like, okay, yeah, I feel hydrated, that's all. But as I got in, I have to tell you, Gary, I was all over the court. I was hopping up and down the court like a kangaroo on crack. I was like all over the place.
Did it improve your game?
Did it improve my game? I have to tell you, I was thinking better. I had more energy. I could get to the ball faster than before, and even when I got to the ball, I could think of the numerous options I had to hit the ball, whereas before I would just play on instinct. This time I was actually thinking well and really getting shots, and I beat him like 4 games to 1.
Wow!
I couldn't believe it. He couldn't believe it, and the only thing that changed was, of course, the fact that I had some of that water. And that got me thinking, and I'm always thinking about things like this. But I realized that it wasn't that I didn't have the skill. It wasn't that I didn't have the energy before. It wasn't that I did not hit a ball all the times he was beating me. It was that I had them, but I wasn't able to access them. I wasn't able to think as effectively. And something about this quality water was what enabled me to tap into my brain power and my physical power, energy, to be able to beat him the way I did. And that began to show me that we have a lot more in us and in our bodies and in our minds and our brains than we are actually on a daily basis taking advantage of. And so why study the human brain? Well, like the last quote said from Daniel Amen, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that doctor, because he is one of the, by looking at the way the brain works, that I know. And when it comes to about the human brain and why we should study the human brain, it just shows me that I keep getting this call coming in. Okay, excuse me. Somebody was interrupt me here from another call. But the bottom line is to survive and thrive in this world, we must continually receive and accurately process the right kind of information. Our abilities are already there in us. If the brain isn't functioning well, we will not be able to tap into that ability. And that ability includes healing ability. That ability also includes your mental cognitive ability. Many of the problems that we have in the world today, whether with kids, ADD, ADHD, or elderly people, Alzheimer's and Parkinson's disease being the most common, and of course memory loss, which happens with age. But many of these things really are because of a problem somewhere, either in the brain chemicals or in the brain structure or brain function. So we're going to look at all these, and we're going to try and see, give people the basic principles for knowing how to take care of their brain. For the most part, we have not been taught that. And I know last couple of weeks we talked about the heart and how to help the heart be strengthened and how important the heart is. But still, the most important organ is the brain. Why? Because we can replace practically every other organ in the body. We have not yet developed the technology to replace the human brain. So obviously it is the master control system. It is what I call generalissimo, the governator, the head honcho, all the things you want to talk about it. And again, there are two obstacles to vibrant health and longevity: ignorance and complacency. Are you seeing the screen?
Yep.
Okay, good. So again, we have to search for information that will help us, especially now with regards to the brain. And you can see the place the brain holds. I particularly point to, I named it the hypothalamus, and we're going to see why I chose the hypothalamus out of all the other structures in the brain as the main center we have to be aware of. The hypothalamus collects information from all the rest of the body, all the subconscious things, digestive system, circulatory system, and it receives that. Also, it integrates the information from your thoughts, your emotions, the environment, the five senses. It integrates all that inside it, and it responds on a moment-by-moment, by split-second basis. So that's why the brain's up there. But you can see that it holds a preeminent position after your mind and your emotions in controlling the activities of the human body. Have a more complex diagram here again, because the hypothalamus not only functions through the endocrine system, but it also functions through what we know is the autonomic nervous system. Autonomic, of course, means that same word you get automatic from, which basically means that things that go on without our conscious control. So the hypothalamus or the brain controls both the endocrine system and the brain stem and goes all the way down. And remember, as these arrows show, there is constant, continuous feedback. In other words, it continually receives information and it transfers that information. So that is why the brain has to be healthy. It has to be strong to be able to do what it was made to do. Now, basically, we're just going to do a little overview of the brain. Notes are going to be available soon. I apologize that some of these things aren't coming out as quickly as they should. Last week, and I'm still in the middle of a move, so everything is really up in the air, and boy, so many things we're trying to get taken care of. But your notes will be ready soon. I have made some adjustments to these slides. So if there are some things that you feel, oh, well, I need to get I need to get the most updated slides for today, you can just ask Sherry, and she's going to send you more slides, the updated ones. The ones that you've purchased already have most of them, but I think I added like four more slides to it.
Okay.
All right, let's talk about the human brain organ, but there are actually 20 different organs in the human brain, all performing different functions. The human brain is made of about 80% water, weighs about 3 pounds. It constitutes about 2% of our body weight, but, check this out, but it uses about 20% of the oxygen and calories that you take in, and yet it takes about 20%. A fifth of the total oxygen, energy, calories that you take in has to go to the human brain. As a matter of fact, over 50% of all our genes in the body, all the genes in the body, over 50%.
Oh.
Yeah, wow. And yet it constitutes only 2%. So there is a huge, huge amount of information and energy and attention devoted to the brain. Whatever will happen, you cannot replace the human brain, because that is where so much happens. We also detect centers in the brain that are devoted to spirituality, your perception of God, or perception of your crater or whatever it is. There are actually sites in the brain that light up that people can see that actually is working. A couple of other things. Men have a slightly larger brain. Their brains are about 10% larger than ladies' brains. However, the female brain has many more nerve connections per neuron. We're going to see those connections in a little bit. And it has an anatomically larger corpus callosum. That's what I'm pointing to right here. The corpus callosum is what connects the right hemisphere. In the last few years, we've heard about right brain thinking and left brain thinking. Right brain refers to your ability to see the big picture. Left brain refers to focuses more on detail, on words. The speech center of the brain is actually in the left brain. But anyway, we don't want to go into too much detail about that. But basically, the corpus callosum, like I said, connects the two brains. An adult brain has about 50,000 connections with other neurons. Larger neurons can have as many as 120,000 connections. Now, female brains need more energy than males because they have more connections, more aspects of the nutrients, and more oxygen. Also, because of the larger connections or the larger number of connections, it has to produce more neurotransmitters. And we're going to talk about neurotransmitters a little bit more through the years. It's important for us to see this because there might, especially for those of you who have young kids or young grandkids, this might be helpful because what we found out is that a lot of the things that happen in later life can be traced back. And I'm not trying to be traced back to what happened in childhood. One thing for sure, if your mother, the pregnant mother had good nutrition and less stress during her pregnancy, it is more likely that the brain power of the child would be at a nutrition that you received in pregnancy and in the early periods of your life. We know, for instance, that the hypothalamus, let me go back to slides back real quick. I'm sorry, what I meant to say was the hippocampus. The hippocampus is involved in memory and it's involved in stem cell production. We produce neurons. We're still being taught in medical school that if there's a damage to a part of the brain, it is more than likely that you will never be able to regenerate those brain cells because your brain is dead. The brain does not reproduce with some of those sites. There are several sites in the brain that can reproduce neurons, and the hippocampus is one of them. Now, what I was trying to say was this. Things like sexual molestation in kids at an early age can actually cause so much stress that it actually fries and destroys memory and therefore meddling with the ability to reproduce brain cells. Personally, I think that's the greatest tragedy that can happen to a child, for you to be molested by an adult. It's criminal. It's wrong. Oh gosh, it is criminal. But anyway, I brought that up to show that the hippocampus is very, very important. And also, because we're talking about brain development, let's see how the whole brain develops. Are you seeing the graph?
Yes. Okay.
Within the first year of life, that's when the brain just explodes. And you can see that this peak is going out. You can see the graph just shooting upwards. Okay.
And David,
by 3 years,
is this graph the same for males and females?
Yes, pretty much. Good question. By 3 years, a baby's brain has formed about 1,000 trillion connections. Boy, that's a huge number. About 2 times as many as major brain power. That's why around that age, that's the best time to cram that little tyke with all the information you can get. Teach him languages if you have the ability to get languages, get language teachers. Teach that child languages. Teach that child how to play the piano. Teach that child music. Let him be exposed to as much as possible because his brain can absorb or difficult to absorb all kinds of information. But those kids, oh, they're like sponges. They just soak things up. So I always advocate soak them with the most amount of information. Also, we found out that brainwave patterns of kids between those predominantly hypnotic patterns, hypnosis. As we know, if you're in a hypnotic state, you're more likely to receive information, to receive impressions, to receive suggestions. And these kids are like that. They can receive so much off-right and give them the most impressions and suggestions that will empower them and enable them to be successful in later years. Unfortunately, much of the time, the kind of information they get is no, 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 and they're made to feel they can't do much stuff. But if we empower them properly, then we set them up for greater success in life. Okay. Mm-hmm. And there's is rapid social, intellectual, emotional, and physical development. The brain activity, even at that age, is twice that of adults. And although new synapses continue to be formed throughout life, never again will the brain be able to master new skills or again. So that's why it's so important to give those kids that information to empower those brains. Also, after the age of 11, for the most part, there's another spike further down, but I'm going to talk about that in a while. After the age of 11, the brain begins to prune extra connections at a rapid speed, and so you see it's declining a little bit. You see the teenage years. The teenage years are happening here. But when you get to be 20 years of age, that's when the prefrontal lobe, let's see that picture real quick. Right here is what is known as the prefrontal lobe. That area is involved in judgment, cognition, being able to analyze, being able to overcome your natural instincts, overcome emotional impulses. Is that part that is like the executive of the brain. It helps form the discipline. So judgment, if there's one word to describe the prefrontal frontal lobe, it is judgment, the ability to choose right from wrong, and that peaks in the early 20s. So as we always say, you are at your height. You are at the best of your abilities. Bone density too is maximum between when you get to 25, and it stays that way till about 35, and after 35 it begins to decline. Again, this is for the average person. We know people who continue to improve, who continue to grow, even though for their age they should have less connections or less brain ability, but yet they continue to expand and grow and be better and better. I think George Burns, the comedian who died at over the age of 100, and of course Bob Hope too, was about 100 too. They succeeded in life, and even though they declined as they grew older, yet they were able to be very useful to their families and to the world because they kept active. And that's the key part here: being active, learning new things, having a great social support, social atmosphere, all help to reduce the aging process and help to protect your brain. And of course, nutrients play a huge role. So we're going to get to that in a minute. There's our picture again. I'm going to go on to the next one. One of the key things that deal with brain function is what is known as the synapse. The synapse, S-Y-N-P-S-A-S-E. That's going to be in your notes. But basically, brain cells are, this is an extension of a brain cell, and this is another extension of the brain cell. Are you seeing this blackish picture?
Yes.
Okay. The synapse is what we're talking about here. And you see these yellow dots in between the two brain cells. This is actually called, these are neurotransmitters. Impulses or information is sent from one nerve cell to the other through the synapse, and it is sent through by the use of chemicals called neurobrain transmitters. I'm going to compare that with to hormones in a little while. But as we mentioned before, there are more of these connections in the female brain than there are in the male brain, and therefore there are more of these yellow dots, these neurotransmitters being produced in the female brain than the male brain. Therefore, female brains women need to take in more of the nutrients that will help to create these neurotransmitters. Make sense? You're
going to tell us what some of those are, right?
Yeah, we're going to tell, and it's going to be in the notes too. Obviously, you can't treat everything, but some of them is going to be the notes. All right, let's talk about what the brain does on a regular basis. This is the brain right here, okay? And then you see the arrows coming from within the body, and I mentioned this earlier. So you have nerve impulses. You've got the hormones sending information, especially to the hypothalamus. Each second, each millisecond, your impulses are going from your heart muscle to your brain. Impulses are going from your legs, from the joints, from your from inner status of the body. Subconsciously, obviously, you don't know anything about what's going on. Also, at the same time, you're getting information from the five senses, information from your social contacts. Sometimes of us are actually receiving electromagnetic information that you can't perceive through the five senses. But because your brain can and your heart can, your brain is receiving all that information. Tremendous amount of stuff the brain has to deal with. It integrates all this information, and you can see it's going round and round and round. That is processing the data, it's integrating it, and then is now responding to it. And you see those arrows going out from the brain. The response is to do with either increase the temperature, reduce it, increase the heart rate, reduce the heart rate, slow down digestion, all depending on what the information it has gotten from the two places, from the inside and from the outside. running after this person. Well, what the brain does is that all of a sudden it freezes excretion. It increases the heart rate so that blood can get to the muscles of the legs and the muscles of the brain. I'm sorry, the brain cells, so that the person is able to run and get out. It's called the fight or flight. And the third one is the freeze mechanism. You don't want the freeze mechanism because, you just stay put. You're so paralyzed with fear you can't do anything. That's more helpful to you, enables you to get away from it. But I just want to help people see that the brain controls all these things and responds to the atmosphere over and over and over again. But while it's doing all this, it's doing all those great things, most of them subconscious. But at the same time, your brain can learn several new facts per second, every second, for the rest of your life, and still have more than enough left over to learn more.
Wow.
Amazing stuff. We just don't have a clue about the potential that our brains have, and unfortunately, us in the first place. So it's a tragedy. I think if there's one problem with the human race, it's the tragedy that we have not used our brains like we should. And people like I think Henry Ford said to do, the most difficult thing for a human being to do is to think. And of course, thinking involves using our brain cells. But hopefully we'll be able to, after this class, we'll be able to help people use more of their brain capacity or help people to support more of their brain cells. I have some notes there. Okay. I'll tell you what, we'll get to that later on. But what prevents us from reaching the potential? Obviously, we've alluded to certain things. Stress, for instance. Let's take a look at them. I got this from Daniel Imen's book. I strongly encourage people to get that book. I'm going to list it at the end. An accident and part of your brain was damaged. Obviously, that's going to be a major problem. You just have less capacity to use. Emotional trauma, stress, medications, painkillers, tranquilizers, drugs of abuse, alcohol. This Daniel Imen person, we're going to get to him in a minute, but he has done more brain scans than any other person alive, according to him. And he said the worst brain scans he has ever seen are those of people on alcohol, on scans. That brains are really, really damaged. However, we do know that some kinds of alcohol, like red wine, for instance, does have some therapeutic use, especially the ones that have the grapes that have been squeezed through this fine. They confer some really good phytochemicals which help to protect brain tissue as well as other tissues. So what Daniel Imen recommends is that you have like no more than 3 glasses of wine a week to give you the benefits that you need. Caffeine has a problem because it raises environmental toxins, pesticides, the things we inhale, especially if you're living in a urbanized, industrialized city. China, for instance, Beijing, major problems with the pollution in the air out there. All those things not only affect your body, they affect your brain. Vaccines, pesticides. All right. Drugs of abuse. He actually lists alcohol as one of the drugs of abuse, and coffee. Okay, so that's a good thing. I can still continue taking my coffee then. Heroin, inhalants, ecstasy, and the rest. These all cause damage to your brain. When brain cells are damaged, yes, it is possible to replace the brain cells. However, the brain cell is difficult to replace are the heart muscles and the lens of the eye. Most people don't realize this, but the lens of your eye is actually made up of cells. They are made up of transparent. The cells actually had nuclei and all the other things, but the nuclei disappears so that they can be transparent. Because if the nuclei were there, you would not be able to see through the lens of the eye. So it's one of those special cells that allow you to actually see through them. So the nervous tissue. And part of the reason is this: as you grow older, especially when you get to be about 40, with the lens of the eye, for instance, because of the ultraviolet rays, the infrared, all those things out in the sun, or even lights that you're exposed to, flash bright lights over a period of time, the accumulative effect of this is powerful, less effective to be able to accommodate and to respond to changes, and therefore eventually people after the age of 40 begin to need glasses for their health. But if those same people were taking good nutrition for the brain and for the eye, it would have been less likely for that to happen at that early age.
Mm.
Okay. We mentioned the hippocampus. Very, very important. This is what is involved when you're learning new stuff. When you learn new stuff, the hippocampus is stimulated, and therefore is stimulated to create more stem cells. The olfactory bulb is really the fancy name for the nostril, the nose, the cells of the nose that deal with sensation, odors, and what's a good word for odor?
Just different smells.
Different scents. Okay, different scents and different smells. It also produces brain cells in kids with hydrocephalus, kids there's been a blockage to the liquid. The ventricles control the liquid. They contain the liquid in the brain that eventually becomes cerebrospinal fluid, which goes down the spinal cord. The centers around that surround those ventricles, that surround that liquid, actually can produce brain cells.
Wow. So David,
the question,
can I ask you a question about the olfactory bulb? So is that why something it brings back a memory?
Good question. Yes, that is why. They are actually very, very well connected. Very, very well connected. The olfactory bulb and the hippocampus are very, very well connected. As a matter of fact, you just hit the nail. You hit it right on. Brings up the earliest memories.
Okay. So I know because I always feel like I have to touch and smell everything just to remember it. So.
Thanks. So we can.
Okay. Better move on.
Okay. All right. Good question. Quite a few things, because the brain is such a diverse, versatile organ that you cannot just say, oh, it's going to do one thing. And even after we finish treating this today, there's still going to be a lot of things that you're going to need to know. But hopefully we're going to be able to lay the foundation well enough for you to be able to yourself. Before I go on, I was watching this PBS program, and the minister or the secretary for education, she came up on TV for the United States, and she said that kids today in the United States, according to studies, the kids, the level or the ranking, kids ranking out of 29 countries, of course the developed countries, our kids in the United States come 25th academically. 25th academically. That's pathetic if you think about it in other countries, and yet they are so far behind. Mm-hmm. And a lot of that will have to do with, well, first of all, the family environment. Many kids are growing up in broken homes. That does affect mental abilities. The emotions are out of whack. For the most part, your brain is going to be out of whack too, because your emotions. Remember that PNI slide? Yeah. The emotions supersede your brain. Like if you're stressed, they found this out. If you're stressed for any length of time, if it's just stress for a short time, you're okay. But if it's a chronic thing over a period of time, they found out that stress produces substances known as glucocorticoids, which are stress hormones. And what stress hormones do is that they depress you to think clearly, the ability to judge properly, and as a matter of fact, they depress your immune system function. Mm. So all those things are affected by stress, and we can't say enough about stress. On the call a couple of weeks ago, he said, just studies show that 90% of all the problems that we have in our health is as a result of emotional stress.
And that's one of the hardest things to change.
Some studies on rats. Of course, you might say, I'm not a rat, but they found that there are many things that we can learn from the studies on rats that actually translate to adulthood. In fact, in some ways, our physiologies are very similar to that of rats. I'm not calling anybody a rat, but hey, that's what they found out. Well, they found this out. They took a rat that paid a lot of attention to its litter, its kids. It would rub them, it would stroke them, it would lick them, and keep just dote over them. Then they had another rat that had same number of kids, but it would have a more paws-off approach over a period of time. And they found out that the rats or the mice, I think it was mice, I'm not sure now, the rats that had attention paid to them in early childhood, they were the ones less likely to develop stress. They were the ones that had the least amount of stress hormones in their body. They're the ones that had the least amounts of heart problems and diabetes.
Wow.
The ones who didn't have motherly attention developed all those things: hypertension, diabetes, stress hormones, all those things. That same thing applies to human beings too. More attention given in childhood, the better attention, the greater the chance of living a healthy life in adulthood.
But Dave, even though, well, because most of us, that's not something we can go back and change for ourselves at this point. So does, as an adult, do those other nurturing, caring relationships also help with that?
No question. No question. I have always advocated that it doesn't matter where you are in life. Like I said, we started with brain potential. We have the ability, our brains, our bodies do, to come back, to bounce back from anything that has happened, even in childhood. It may be difficult, it may be tough, but with social support, spiritual support, I mean, my number one thing is spiritual support, of course, but social support, nutritional support, being in a work environment that helps you tap into your creativity, that taps into your key skills and talents will help get you to bounce back from whatever the problem that you had as a child. Remember, I gave this story about this billionaire who at 17 fell down the stairs. He broke his back, and because of his love for his girlfriend, who is now his wife, he went against all the predictions and the prognosis by his doctors, who said that he would never walk again. He would never walk again. But he decided, no, that's not true. I'm going to retrain my body, and that's exactly what he did. And eventually walked out of the hospital, and now he's like I said, he's a billionaire. He's fully fit. He's doing lots of great things. Oh, he was a billionaire. I think he had a problem, so he lost all the money. But he's back now. he's now a public speaker, and he's earning a very good income now because he's able to tell people about his mistakes and failures of the past. Okay, that was 17, but even then, there are people who are in their 40s and 50s who had, in some cases, severe brain damage, who got on the right kind of nutrition, and they really went all out. And with the support of their spouses, were able to reverse and regain their health and their brain cell function back. So as far as I'm concerned, nothing is impossible when it comes to the human body. All we need to do, hope. There is always, always, always hope.
Yep.
All right. Good. All right. Let's look at, why isn't this thing showing? Okay, all right, we're going to go on to the next one. What are the general principles? What does the brain need? Okay, again, we have our 4 fundamentals of healthy living. A focused, happy, and productive mind, number 1. Good nutrition, good exercise, good social support, and when you do have a problem, and I always advocate checkups too, when you do have a problem or you're at a checkup, be able to understand what is going on and ask your doctors the right questions, because they're busy. Besides, they're not taught that much with regards to health and promoting health promotion as opposed to dealing with disease. So you have to be ready with your questions before you go there. Studies show that people, they have questions, but because they didn't write this down, they get into the hospital environment and they're intimidated and they forget everything that everything they wanted to ask their doctor, and they leave dejected, they leave depressed because their questions and their problems weren't taken care of. So write your questions down and go to your doctor prepared to ask those questions. Okay, good. Let's talk about nutrition, because I guess that's what most people want to hear. The human body heals itself, and proper nutrition provides the resources needed to accomplish that task. And that's by our friend, the legendary Roger Williams. He's long gone now, but he's the one who discovered pantothenic acid. Vitamin B5 is what is responsible for all kinds of metabolic processes, including metabolism of carbohydrates, carbohydrates, fats, and, of course, proteins. So he knows what he's talking about. And think about that. We mentioned the toxins. Some of these toxins you cannot avoid because you live in this atmosphere. Mm-hmm. What we can do is to ensure that we provide our bodies and our brains with the resources necessary to repair and bounce back from the damage that we're constantly being exposed to. Remember, 20% of all the nutrition, 20% of the oxygen and the calories that we need that goes into our bodies goes into the brain. So it's crucial. All right, there are 7 things that we have to look at when regards to optimal health. And this is going to be in your notes too. But water is number one. And here's what Dr. Amen said. Given that your brain is about 80% water, the first rule of brain nutrition is adequate water to hydrate your brain. Even slight dehydration can raise stress hormones, which can damage your brain over time. Drink at least 84 ounces of water a day.
Betty goes and grabs a glass of water.
That would be a good idea. That would be a good idea. Okay. All right. So water is number one. Essential vitamins. We're just going to mention a few. Vitamin B complex, very, very good for brain function. Also, some of vitamin B12 especially, very, very important for brain function. B5. Essential minerals. But you're going to have this in your notes. Essential minerals like zinc, for instance. Zinc is called the intelligent or smart hormone. Very, very important for brain function too. I think calcium. Calcium is very important because the brain is an electrical apparatus, is an electrical organ. Calcium is really what enables nerve impulses, which are electrical impulses to pass from one cell to the other. It's the interplay of calcium that enables brain function, enables the brain to transfer information. So we must have adequate amounts of calcium. Essential amino acids, of course, they serve as the building blocks for all proteins, but especially tryptophan. Tryptophan is one of the essential amino acids. Tryptophan is very, very important to produce. It forms the building block for the neurotransmitter called serotonin. Serotonin is what gives you a sense of well-being. It is the neurotransmitter that is depleted in depression. Mm. When people are depressed, it is because they have not enough serotonin, and that's why drugs like Prozac are created, because they help to increase the levels of serotonin in the body.
Mm. And are there foods that have tryptophan in them? Like turkey, I think I've heard turkey has that.
Right, turkey has tryptophan. That's a good one. I probably need to write a note here and see which foods have tryptophan. Okay. Yeah, but meats in general have tryptophan for people. Also, arginine. We mentioned arginine yesterday. Thursday, when the Dr. Elwad. Let's just call him Dr. Harry. How about that?
That's a good idea.
Wasn't that a great webinar?
It was awesome.
Oh, I thought that was great. Well, the whole webinar was about arginine, and arginine is also an amino acid, but it is essential for to repair blood vessels and to ensure that the integrity of the blood vessels is good. If the blood vessels are stiff and are non-responsive, that causes hypertension. So arginine makes the blood vessels more flexible, more pliable, so blood can flow through without resistance and without impedance. So very, very important. And again, because your brain is so needs about 20% of all the information. About 20% of all the foods, the oxygen has to go to your brain. That makes it very, very. You begin to see the importance of arginine in ensuring that the brain gets adequate blood supply. What we know is this: your brain cannot, after 4 to 7 minutes of a restriction of blood flow to the whole brain or to certain parts of the brain, results in permanent brain damage. Mm. Well, again, permanent may not be that permanent because we now know that the brain can reproduce stem cells. However, even that has its limits. Mm-hmm. So very, very important. The other tissues in the body, the other organs in the body, they are not that dependent on blood flow. They're not that. They are more resistant to blood flow restriction than the brain is. And one of the reasons is this: the brain can only use glucose to produce energy. Other tissues like the muscles in the leg and the hand don't have to use glucose. They can actually use other kinds of, they can use fat, they can use other kinds of nutrients to convert to something close to glucose and therefore use it for energy. The brain cannot store glucose. It cannot use anything other than glucose. And so if blood flow is restricted to the brain, it means glucose is restricted to the brain. And if you're talking more than 4 minutes, some people say 7 minutes, but more than 4 minutes, ooh, that's not good. Mm. So So we want to ensure blood flow to the brain. And like Dr. Harry said, he said he's many of the cases in which people had memory problems or health brain problems, he found out that when they started on arginine and other good nutritional products, their memory problems seemed to reduce. That's what they reported to him, and so I think that makes sense. If brain blood flow is improved, then essential fatty acids. Remember, your brain. If you're talking about, we just mentioned that 80% of your brain is made up of water, but the solid weight, the remaining 20% solid weight of your brain, 60% of that is made up of essential fatty acids, different kinds, but omega-3s are the most important of the fatty acids, because we're going to see in a minute that the transmission of nerve impulses from one nerve cell to the other is actually helped by omega-3s. Omega-3s actually form the sheath, the membrane, what covers the nerve cells come together is omega-3s that form the sheath, that form the covering. So if the omega-3s are working well, are in good supply, hopefully your brain is in good supply. And they found out that people who have mood problems and health brain problems or mind emotional problems, good supplementation with omega-3s helps to reduce that and improve brain function. We're going to talk about sugars and glyconutrients soon. Phytochemicals, again, for protection, primarily for protection. Antioxidants form a key part of phytochemicals. Antioxidants would include vitamin C and vitamin E, which are the vitamins that are very important for brain function too. But what we know is that, I think we mentioned this in the endocrine system lecture, estradiol, which is the most important estrogen in the body, is more powerful than vitamin C and vitamin E combined. Very, very important. Why is that important? Because it helps to protect the brain cells. When free radicals in too high levels, they damage the neurons. Again, neurons are more difficult to repair and replace. So you want to protect your brain from free radicals. Mm-hmm. So we talked about the general principles, and we talked about the nutrition. Let's talk about things that deal with the brain specifically. Again, the brain and the endocrine system work very, very closely together. You have on the right side the endocrine system, the way the endocrine system works. Hormones are released from the brain and from the other 8 endocrine organs, and like insulin is released by the pancreas. Insulin works on practically every cell in the body, except probably the brain to take in glucose. So it has to be able to fit onto the cell, the cell, whether it's a muscle cell or a fat cell, and insulin has to be able to drive glucose into the body, into the cell. Without glucose, all be damaged. In the same way, well, not the same way, but neurotransmission is different in that it's not like a hormone attaches to the nerve cell, but impulses and information are transmitted from one nerve cell to the other, cleft C-L-E-F-T, then synaptic cleft S-Y-P-N-A-T-I-C. And these are neurotransmitters. We mentioned serotonin for depression. Acetylcholine is very, very important for alertness, for general brain function. Dopamine, too, it gives you a feeling of well-being. It helps to coordinate and control the muscular activity. Of course, in Parkinson's disease, dopamine is either deficient or it's not functioning well, or the cells are not responsive to impulses from one nerve cell to the next. So this is, in terms of brain function, this is what we must look at. So whatever helps to facilitate this process is what we have to look at supporting the brain. Okay? So that, of course, would include the integrity over here. We mentioned omega-3s. That would include the production of these neurotransmitters, and, of course, include the integrity of this over here. Let's go on. Keep away from what affects the endocrine system, affects the brain, what affects the immune system, affects the brain. We know that the immune system, for instance, secretes hormones too. The immune system secretes hormones which affect brain function.
David, will you remind us what P&I stands for?
Psychoneuroimmunology. Psycho means the mind, neuro means the nervous system, and of course included in that will be the endocrine system. So people actually call it PENI, psychoendocrine neuroimmunology, but let's just leave it at PNI. So psychoneuroimmunology. Okay, so the immune system also secretes hormones which affect brain function. So if your immune system is in a bad shape, it's not likely that your brain and nervous system will function well either. Same thing with the endocrine system. So when you're talking about supporting the brain, you have to also focus on supporting the PNI system. And that's what we're doing with these classes, helping people understand how each of them can be helped. So let's talk about specifics some more. The key principles in terms of helping the brain function. Key principles you have to look at are the blood flow to the brain and cell-to-cell communication. Remember that picture we showed? Mm-hmm. If you can focus on these two, you've got probably 90% of your problems taken care of. And I have a picture here. This is not in the first handout that was sent out, so if you guys want another one, we can send you some more. Okay, so brain blood flow. The heart sends blood to the brain, and that blood contains oxygen, glucose. We mentioned glucose, very important nutrients, including the vitamins and minerals and hormones. If this is affected or impeded in any way, your brain will be compromised. But of course, if you're not taking enough in the body in the first place, you're not going to get enough in the blood to the brain either. So you have to take enough from the outside to ensure that your blood contains ample amounts to help the brain. This slide also is not in the main slide, but I just want to use this to show you that the nerve cells connected to several other nerve cells. 50,000 is the average number they found out. So obviously this is a very simplified diagram. So this nerve cell communicates with this nerve cell and that nerve cell and that nerve cell and that nerve cell. It has to produce neurotransmitters like serotonin, dopamine, in order for the transmission the transmission of impulses and information to go from one nerve cell to the other. If this is affected in any other way or in any way, your ability to think, your ability to respond, the ability of your hypothalamus, for instance, to receive information from the rest of the body will be impaired. Again, female brains have a lot more of these connections than male brains do. There's a key thing there. All right, Daniel Amen, we mentioned him earlier on, and I think he's got lots of great information. He's a clinical neuroscientist, child and adolescent psychiatrist, and medical director of the Amen Clinic for Behavioral Medicine in Fairfield, California. He's also, for my alma mater, we went to the same college, so obviously he must know what he's talking about. But he's a really smart guy, and so what we're going to first of all do is to look at what he has said about what the brain needs, because again, he's seen more brain scans than any other human being alive, so he should know what he's talking about, and he mentions a lot of these things in his book, Change Your Brain, Change Your Life. It's in most bookstores. Brain nutrients, and here's a list of the things that he thinks are very important. Vitamin B6, vitamin C and E, remember, antioxidants, very, very important. He says ginkgo biloba, the herb, which is one of the most powerful herbs in China. I mean, it's been around for millennia in China and the Southeast Asian region. He said patients or people that he has seen with the best-looking brain scans, are those on ginkgo biloba.
Wow.
And in the notes, I mentioned some of the things ginkgo biloba does, so it's really good stuff. Alpha-lipoic acid, phosphatidylserine, some of these things I can't even pronounce myself. Tough stuff. CoQ10, very important. CoQ10 is very important for most cells. Again, it's very important for the heart muscle too. By the time you get to be 65, you have 72% less CoQ10 than you had when you were 20 on average. CoQ10 is very, very important for muscle function.
David, in your research on your research on the CoQ10, have you come across recommended amounts? That's one of the things I just keep seeing, such wide ranges of recommendations.
Oh, okay. I know there was one.
And maybe you can include that in the notes or something, but every time I mention that, I think, was it 10 milligrams or 1,000? Just there's this huge range.
Okay, I'll get that for you.
Okay.
CoQ10. Okay. All right. Well, the fish oils, because fish oils have the omegas. They found, I mentioned this, I think a week ago, that people, especially in the Asian region, who consume a lot of fish, they have the lowest amounts of suicide, lowest amounts of depression, lowest amounts of mental dysfunction. Okay, what is wrong, or what was wrong with the last picture? Let's look at that again. He mentioned quite a few things. Some things I feel, because of what we know and what we've studied, are missing, and I'm going to explain that in a while. But let's see it here's the way I approach the brain. Okay, I mean, who am I to challenge an expert's opinion? I don't know. Well, hey, information is growing every single day, so an expert doesn't know everything. He might be an expert, but there's always information that is out there that some experts don't know about. So let me try to defend my position here. First of all, I haven't been given a position yet, so I'm going to give you the position and then defend myself. All right. When you're talking about the human brain, we're going to look at the human cell again. Now, the cell is the basic unit of life, is the basic unit of your body. Now, your body has 60 trillion cells, and it has a brain. Okay, and we've talked about how important the brain is. Well, in the same way, each cell is a unit on its own, and each cell also has a brain. For years, we had thought the brain was actually the nucleus of the cell. That's this big blue thing right here. For years, we thought it was a nucleus. But until recently, and recently would be about 100 years, but it's still not widespread knowledge. Until recently, we found out that it's not really the nucleus, but actually this circular thing around the brain, around the cell, called the cell membrane, that actually coordinates, integrates, and affects the different functions of the cell, from metabolism, from reproduction to repair, to everything that affects everything that the cell does. And remember, the cell is a living thing. There are 7 characteristics of the living thing. Just as there are several characteristics of the cell, there are several characteristics of the living thing. What makes a cell a living thing is that it has to be able to perform all those 7 functions. And one of them, of course, is adaptation, and then another is reproduction. All these functions are coordinated, again, like I said, in the cell membrane. And if you think about it, in developmental embryology, when the cell or when the baby is developing in the body, the cell, the brain of the cell, the brain of the body actually develops from the same place that the skin of the body develops from. There are 3 layers in the early embryo. There's the ectoderm, the mesoderm, and the endoderm. You don't need to know that. But the ectoderm, which is the most external layer, is from the ectoderm, the brain, the human brain, and the spinal cord and the nervous system develops, but also the skin develops. So it becomes less difficult to appreciate now when you think that the skin of the cell is the brain of the cell. Just as the brain and the skin of the human body develop from the ectoderm, well, they develop in the same thing. So the skin of the cell and the brain of the cell are one and the same. Make sense?
Yes. You
Okay.
definitely see the parallel there.
You can see that, right? Okay. That's good. I hope everybody else sees that. So again, this whole membrane is actually the brain. You think about it this way: the skin of the cell is the membrane. MEMBRAIN is the BRAENE. Think about it that way. Anyway, all right. Let's take a closer look. Again, nutrition. Let's look at the structure, because that's what we're looking at now. The structure of the cell. When we're talking about the structure of the cell, we're talking about the structure of the cell membrane, because we're looking at the brain of the cell, and we want to see the parallel between that and the human brain. The cell membrane consists of, basically, this red thing here consists of mainly lipids and proteins. Okay, so automatically you know that you need lipids and proteins in your diet, right? Okay, lipids, of course, include fatty acids. The stalk you're seeing here, like a tree trunk, is made up of proteins, mostly proteins and or lipids. Most cell receptors are actually made up of, in fact, all cell receptors are made up of proteins, and then these blue structures here, each of these structures is a unit called monosaccharide. Mono means one, saccharide means sugar. Combination of several monosaccharides gives you a poly means many, polysaccharide chain. So the combination of these two is what makes a receptor. Now go back to what we saw with the nerve cell transmission of information from one nerve cell to the other. Even in that synapse, I wish I could, okay, let me see if I can go back to that real quick. Hang on. I should have gotten this. Okay. even here, these are also nerve cells, and therefore they have receptors that are able to absorb these neurotransmitters. And those receptors are made up of proteins and polysaccharides or monosaccharides. So therefore, in answer to the question that I posed earlier, he did not include glyconutritionals in his entire list of things that needs to be that are important for the cell to function. I would say because of this main factor, that the brain of the cell, again, these are receptors, but they're also sense organs. They act as sense organs. They're the ones who receive information. Again, nerve cells need to be able to receive neurotransmission. So therefore, cell-to-cell communication is especially crucial in the brain. And for cell-to-cell communication to occur, there has to be adequate amounts of polysaccharides, glyconutritionals. There has to be adequate amounts of proteins and lipids, which form the stalk and the skin of the cell membrane. So here's my revised list of things that we should all have for our body. I mean, this forms the basic thing, but if you want to go higher than that, go ahead. You just can't take your body. This is the only body you have. You can't replace it, so you might as well go all out and get as much as you possibly can. So I have a list of 6 things. Omega-3s, very, very important because they form the structure of nerve cells. Glyconutritionals, I'll put that at number 2. Foods containing key amino acids, tryptophan, again for serotonin, and then arginine, which of course helps to improves brain blood flow. Plant sterols. Remember, estradiol, along with other hormones, are extremely important for the function and the protection of the brain, of brain tissue. Ladies reaching menopause sometimes complain of memory problems when their endocrine system is put back in balance, when they have enough of the estrogen and the estradiol, mainly through natural means. Of course, if the natural means don't work well enough, of course, by all means, seek medical attention. But start with the basics, start with the fundamentals, start with the things that you know that your body is lacking, and then build upon that. Ginkgo biloba, we found out from studies that ginkgo biloba actually increases brain blood flow too. So just like arginine does, the ginkgo biloba does that. I think it also improves response to serotonin. Remember, serotonin gives your brain a good feeling. It also gives your brain a feeling of satiety, that you're satisfied, so you don't want to eat too much. It also protects you against depression. And ginkgo biloba helps in the production of serotonin and also in the response of nerve cells to serotonin. All right, you need to have antioxidants. Antioxidants protect your brain. When free radicals are released, they damage the cell membranes, which are mainly made up of fat and proteins. Free radicals damage the cell membrane. Therefore, you must be able to protect your cell membranes by using antioxidants. Again, vitamin C, vitamin E, and estradiol also work very well as antioxidants. But the key principle here is the antioxidants you should get should be both fat and water soluble. They should be long-lasting. In other words, they don't just spike and disappear once they get into your bloodstream. They have to stay in the bloodstream for a decent amount of time, 3, 4, 5 hours, 6 hours, okay? And then you should have great ORAC scores. Oxygen radical absorptive capacity just means it's a function of how effective they are. And most antioxidants now have on the bottle or on the label, they show the ORAC scores, or you can find out for yourself. What else can you do other than nutrition? Again, like we said before, it's not just one time or one thing you do. You have to approach it from several different perspectives. And so we're going to add these other things here: music, meditation. This meditation helps to calm down your nerves, helps it reduces stress hormones, and increases the production of good hormones. mind-centering techniques, practices. So this would include some of the heart health thing that Steve Sunday was talking about. I think it's really, really important to help to stabilize your heart health, your heart levels of hormones, and he mentioned that last 2 weeks ago. Learning new things helps to produce brain stem cells. Hippocampus, remember, hippocampus is what is most stimulated when you're learning new things. And so you have to be able to continually be in an environment in which you're learning stuff. You need to have quality social contact, very, very important interaction. Some scientists, researchers claim that why people age, one of the reasons people age so rapidly is because they don't have that close family contact, close contact with people they love. And that's why people in the 70s and 80s, because they don't have those hugs like they used to before, that touch factor is diminished, and they find out that touch, hugs, help to produce good hormones, which help to protect your brain. So
well, maybe we should pause the webinar now so everybody can go hug someone.
Everybody should go hug someone. That's right. At least put a note, make a note to go hug at least 7 people in a day.
Okay.
One of our callers actually sent me an e-hug and said, "Here's a hug for the day," and gave me a hug over the email. So, thanks, Marlene. Okay, chiropractic again. I always mention that chiropractic. Most medical practitioners think it's quackery, but hey, from my personal experience, I think they are a key factor in all the whole healthcare system. Your brain and spinal cords are very, very sensitive. They're very, very fragile, and the bone structure of the skull and the spinal vertebra that protect them. If the nerves are impinged or affected, or the spinal column is out of place or out of whack, it's going to affect your nervous system function. It's eventually going to affect your brain. So it's important to keep visit your chiropractor to ensure that your spinal column is well aligned, and your brain will thank you later for sure. Okay, and here you go again, the whole system together. And when you see and understand how health works, you now understand how all these things, how the brain health can actually affect all these things here. We don't have time to talk about that now. So in summary, balance is the key. Ensure that your brain, your nervous system is receiving all the nutrients in the right balance. Of course, you need to focus on improving your endocrine system and improving your immune system. And I think more than anything else, what helps make this happen, even more than social contact, is that the individual, and this is from a man who is known to be one of the wisest men in history, if not one of the wisest men in history, King Solomon, and he says there is nothing better for a man or a woman than to enjoy his work, because that is his lot. If you think about that, nothing better. I mean, he's like saying even more than social contact, even more than good nutrition. If you're doing something that you enjoy doing and that it's a blessing to people, that probably more than anything will help to open up blood flow to your brain, to help to open up communications between brain cells. It will help you use more of the nutrients that you're absorbing. If you're in something that in a work or in a job that you are not enjoying, and please hear me here, hear me. If you're in a job or career that you hate, and therefore that most people who hate their jobs eventually end up hating their bosses and hating everybody around them, and which trickles back home. If you're in that kind of situation, no matter what else you do, the best nutrition, the best everything else you do, if you are in that kind of situation, at best you're not getting more than, I would say, 50% of the benefits you probably would have gotten if you were in a job or situation that you're enjoying. So very, very, very important. I have a couple of resources here. And while people are looking at this, why don't you shoot the questions?
Okay, when you were talking about being sure to drink plenty of water, is there a risk of having any extra nutrients flushed out by it if you drink excess water? Can you flush out some of the nutrients that you've been taking?
The good thing about excess water is that if it's excess, it's excess. Your body hopefully has an efficient way of, if your kidneys are working okay, they will have an efficient way of getting rid of them. Whether it flushes out nutrients along with it, I really doubt it. What the main things that get into your urine are the toxins, the waste products that are taken into it. If your brain is functioning well and your endocrine system if they're both functioning well, they will be able to extract the right nutrients from it. I don't see it. There is no danger there that I know of.
Okay. And if you are listening and would like to ask a question, go ahead and type it into your question box. Another question about the omega-3s, building new ones or repairing things. The question had to do with, does it help with sheaths in other parts of the body?
I'm sorry, could you see that?
Okay.
Say that again, please.
All right. I think the question was in regards to omega-3s, and the person who asked this, if I'm not asking it correctly, please feel free to type it in again. It was referring to omega-3s, and the question was, does that help with sheaths in other parts of the body?
Sheath would be S-H-E-A-T-H?
Yes, S-H-E-A-T-H.
Well, the sheath, if she's referring to the sheath around the nerve cells, absolutely. The sheath that surround the nerve cells aid conduction of impulses from one to the other. And yes, omega-3s, fatty acids, help to form that sheath.
Okay,
great. Very important.
Great. You mentioned the importance of the ginkgo, and I know you probably can't tell us, use this company, use that company, make those kind of recommendations, but can you give us some general guidelines on choosing a quality manufacturer of ginkgo?
Oh, boy, gosh. I take ginkgo in my coffee. There's this multi-level marketing company that deals with ginkgo. They put it in coffee, so that's my excuse for taking coffee. Because
that's what I do. You got me hooked on that.
Because we want to maintain the integrity of these webinars, you have to email Sherry and get the information.
Okay, great. We actually had somebody type in just real quick some other foods with tryptophan, so I'll just read them just really quickly. Almonds, garbanzo beans, soy, carrots, and oatmeal. So those are some other good sources of tryptophan.
Thank you for that caller.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Diana. One of the slides that you were making reference to that they actually did not have a copy of, you were saying that it's important to focus on these two things. I think that's when you had the picture of the heart at the bottom and the brain at the top. Can you just show them that slide again briefly and just maybe quickly repeat what you had said about the importance of focusing on those two things?
Do they want me to repeat it?
Just a brief summary.
Okay, all right. All right. You're talking about this slide, right?
I think, well, I'm seeing brain blood flow and cell-to-cell communication. I think it was a picture.
This one?
I think that is the one. The person who asked the question, if that's not what you meant, maybe type that to me, but I think that's what they were referring to.
Okay. All right. The brain, again, like we said, 20% of all the oxygen, the glucose, the nutrients that your body needs goes to the brain. And therefore, it's extremely important that you ensure that that the blood flow to the brain is good. Now, of course, if you're hypertensive, if you have plaques in your blood vessels, if you got calcium deposits, which basically are what form plaques, in some cases of having too much cholesterol. And again, I'm saying that a little. I'm saying hypercholesterolemia in the presence of other factors will cause a constriction or buildup of deposits inside the lumen or inside the tube or the lining of the blood vessel. And I think Dr. Harry showed some really great pictures on that one. So if any of those blood vessels are constricted or blocked, it's going to affect the oxygen supply and the glucose supply to the brain. The brain as a whole is very sensitive to a lack of oxygen and a lack of glucose because the brain isn't as plastic or isn't as resilient as other parts of the body. Glucose, for instance, other parts of the body can use other nutrients other than glucose and produce the energy it needs. The brain has to have glucose to produce energy.
Okay.
And so if the brain goes on for about 4 to 7 minutes without oxygen or without glucose or without the blood supply, which brings those into the brain, then your brain is going to die. Your brain is going to die, almost irreversible damage. Okay.
Oh, okay. A lot of people have asked for those sources of tryptophan, so I'm actually doing a little answer to the question that should have gone to all of you. So look in your little question box and you should see it. Let's see, another question. What is the best thing to do for tremors, and what is happening in the brain when a tremor is happening? This person has some family history of Parkinson's.
Okay, good question. What is happening in the brain with tremors? Well, primarily tremors and Parkinson's are due to, in some cases, damage to certain nerve centers in the brain and also in the cerebellum, because the cerebellum is a small, let me show that picture real quick. The cerebellum is a small part of the brain that is responsible for, let's see, got it. That is responsible for it's right here, this orange thing right here, is responsible for balance, for coordination, for stability of the muscle, mainly the skeletal muscles. Now, with tremors, it's a neurotransmitter problem and also the brain cell problem. In some cases, it is not the neurotransmitters aren't being produced like they should. And in other cases, there's damage to the brain cells, the specific brain cells that help to coordinate that. And obviously, with some genes make you more susceptible to that damage. A lot of it has to do with being more susceptible to free radical damage, lack of certain nutrients in your food. But again, the thing is this. It may be in your genes, there may be a susceptibility, but I can guarantee the person who said this that all those people who had Parkinson's or tremors or whatever it is, they were not doing the things that we just talked about today in good enough quantity. And I hate to, I'm not trying to criticize or say anything, but the studies show that even less than more than 99% of people are not even getting a good diet. Well, if you're not getting a good diet, then it means that your brain is not getting enough of the good food. So the truth is, your brain can be protected from all these things if you pay attention to what we're talking about and you do those things. So the truth is, there are many diseases like Dr. Harry mentioned before. Black people are more, as a race, are more susceptible to certain kinds of blood cardiovascular conditions. So it's a genetic thing. However, if black people in general were doing these things, doing what it takes to help protect their cardiovascular system, they would be the exceptions to the rule. So anybody can be the exception to the rule if they get the right kind of information and they apply it.
Right, right. Well, it looks like you've answered most of the questions. This has been wonderful, David. Thank you.
Oh, sure, absolutely. All right. Everybody, of course, has your, wow, we had, how many slides did we show? We showed a lot of slides, huh?
Yeah, we did. And just
yeah,
a reminder, because you did add some slides at the last minute, feel free to email me, and I'll make a new handout that has the most recent slides. So if you would like a copy of that, just shoot me a quick email, and I'll be sure you get it. Excellent.
Well, let's remember this. I almost forgot. Glyconutritionals. One of them is N-acetyl neuraminic acids. That's the biggest of the glyconutritionals. Very, very important for brain function. And galactose. Galactose increases long-term memory. So galactose is very, very important. All right, folks. Enjoyed it. Again, we are always available for you to ask us questions. And if you have any need directions in any way, please shoot an email. Again, we've talked about the brain today. So remember, your brain is the most important part of your body. So you would do well to strengthen and give your brain what it needs to help your body live long and healthy and happy. All right, God bless and have a great week.